And welcome everybody to the fourth episode of The Cultured Gamer. Today's episode, we're going to talk about the delays involving Starfield and the Suicide Squad. We'll also talk about Sony accusing Microsoft of potentially bugging out on Call of Duty, as well as the recent Resident Evil 4 GameStop pre-order debacle. All that and more. Stay tuned. And welcome everybody to the Cultured Gamer. I am your host, Jason Carmona at Moses IVVIOC. And with me today is Taylor Murphy.
Hello.
Welcome back, Taylor. Thanks for joining me today. It's a little impromptu, last minute, trying to get this bright and early. So we got things to do today, but let's jump into what are you playing right now?
So I actually just finished Hogwarts Legacy this last week. I finished the actual storyline,
The
got the
campaign.
true ending, won the House Cup. It was great. Now I'm on my way to try to finish that platinum. So I only have to do. And the problem with the platinum is that you have to play the game with each of the houses. So there's like a 2-hour intro that you have to play for each house.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to get those trophies right now, and then I have to figure out what enemy I haven't killed yet, because apparently there's you have to use your ancient magic on every enemy type, and I'm at like 98%, and I'm trying to figure out which one enemy I'm missing, since it doesn't tell you. So other than that, I'm playing Metroid Prime Remake.
Oh, and how are you liking that?
Oh, it's really hard to improve on perfection, but the better camera and the better controls, 100%.
Yeah,
chef's kiss.
Yeah, I'm still kind of working through my backlog. I'm hoping by the time I get through a couple more Switch games, it'll be uh, more more reliable, the retail side of things, and you can just walk into a store and find it. But knowing Nintendo, they short stock everything, and it's going to be a mess, and prices will probably go up before they go down for that game. So
100%, and it'll always be full price no matter what. I mean, like 5 years later, it'll still be full price, because that's how
right.
Nintendo operates.
And it takes like a special event day, like March 10th, to drop a price, and it's probably one of the few days that they would ever drop prices on Nintendo games, for those little gimmick days. But yeah, I don't see that price going down anytime soon. I just got a recent review code for the Justice League Cosmic Chaos. So I'm playing that right now. Can't talk about it too much until tomorrow, unfortunately. It is aimed towards younger audiences. So with that in mind, the gameplay mechanics are pretty simple. Again, won't go too much into it, but it's definitely targeted towards a younger audience.
Well, I've heard good things about it too, for those who have played it. So
yeah,
even if it is a kid's game, that doesn't mean it's not a fun game. So
right, exactly. No, that's definitely what I was gonna get to. Is being that the target audience is for younger kids, it is really accessible. My son was already chomping down enemies, and it has an instant action co-op mode which allows for 2 players. The solo campaign is one player, and you can't skip the cutscenes. So yeah, so every time we start the game over, we gotta sit through that 10-minute intro scene over and over and over and over again. So, but the game is good. Allows you to play as Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and you can interchange between the 3 characters. So if one character gets low on health and dies off, it automatically swaps to the next character. We'll talk about that more in a future episode. Let's break down some of these breaking stories right now. So the first breaking story is going to be the recent PlayStation 5 software update, rolled out on the 2nd of February. And pretty much what this update is going to do for your PlayStation 5 console, it's going to add a much requested Discord voice chat feature, VRR support for 1440p, and additional UX and social features that give more ways to play with and connect with friends as well. Again, mentioned the Discord chat that's coming. You can start and request a share screen from your friend's profile. And one of the things that I really enjoy, and it's a feature that's on Xbox, that if you own the disc and you have it installed, but you have Game Pass, Game Pass will allow you to play that download, that install without the disc needing to be in the system. And with this new update, the PlayStation 5 adds that as well. So
Yeah.
last night I was activating all my disc downloads that are my disc installs that are also on PlayStation Plus Premium and Extra, activating my Death Stranding, Spider-Man Miles Morales, all my disc-based games that are on PlayStation Plus. I can now play without the need of a disc, so I'm not wearing out my disk drive and laser. So that's a
Yeah.
cool, very, very cool.
That was a very cool feature. And I also like, and this was just me, I really enjoy that the system doesn't auto install now.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have multiple versions of the game,
Right.
like I updated a lot of my disc games from PS4 to the PS5 versions.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I hated was that every time I put the disc in, it would automatically pop up the PS4 version. And then I'd have like a pending install for a
Mm-hmm.
version that I'm not playing. This
Right.
game now recognizes
Mm-hmm.
that it's there, and it just lets you go right into it, which is fantastic. It was actually when I was updating my Dragon Ball Z Kakarot yesterday, I finally noticed the difference. And I'm like, yes, it's happened. There it is.
That was the example I was going to throw at you too. Was Dragon Ball Z Kakarot? We were playing that just recently, and we noticed when we bought the game originally, and that update PS5 update first came out, it would auto install both versions.
Yep.
And it's very annoying. Every time you install, you insert that disc, it starts auto installing. But now they have that new feature, like you mentioned, in it, and it prompts which version you want to install first before it auto installs. So that's a very nice feature. Definitely. The next breaking story that we're going to run through is Microsoft proposes remedies to appease UK regulators' concerns over Activision acquisition. So basically, the UK regulators are concerned that Microsoft owning all these Activision properties will create, a sort of leverage towards Microsoft and their properties. But they've stated that to UK regulators that they've already started creating agreements with Nintendo and Steam and other companies that would allow these properties, these Activision properties, to remain multi-platform. They feel that these binding agreements that they've made with Nintendo in terms of content and streaming programs and abilities that will come later with their properties are far more than enough to appease any concerns. What do you think about this, Taylor?
So I think it's kind of a weird spot, again, because mergers like this are pretty insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I was just reading yesterday that Sony still has like $5 billion that they're willing to spend, and they're ready to spend. They're just waiting to see what happens with this one before they start buying things, which is very interesting because if this happens, if this goes through, I could 100% see Sony being like, okay, we just bought Capcom. Okay, we just bought Square Enix. Okay, we just bought Konami. They'll just go after the big ones and be like, oh, so you have Call of Duty. Now we have Street Fighter. Oh, now we have, and then just completely decimate the playing field. Because I was reading the numbers, the Q1 numbers for the consoles, even with the Q4 numbers of this last year, Sony had like a 44% market share. And then second place was Nintendo with like a 28%. And then the change was Xbox, which, and that's consecutive, the last quarter and then this first quarter, which is just insane that even if, and then there's another reading saying that 3% of the market said that they would shift from Sony to Xbox if it became exclusive. But that 3% doesn't mean a thing when the numbers are that staggering. Like, okay, we were at 44%, now we're at 41%. They're at 20%, now they're at 23%. They're still third place. Like, it doesn't actually do much, which was kind of shocking. But at the same time, I think just the history of Microsoft and how it treats its developers has been a big issue. And I mean, they had Bungie in-house, and then Bungie left, and then now owned by Sony. And I think that even if all these concessions are made, and these concessions are just 10-year contracts, the 10-year contract doesn't really mean a thing for the Nintendo Switch, because unless the Switch Pro actually comes out this year, like all the information is saying it might be, um, this console still can't run current Call of Duty. It can't do all that stuff.
Right. And so that's where the streaming aspect of the streaming services of this
Yeah,
portion, they claim that with content binding deals, including streaming, that this would more than satisfy any concerns that the UK regulators should have. Here's the thing, though. As a gamer who has partook in streaming on the Switch, we all know it's not where it's at.
it's not it. It's not
So,
it. No, and
right.
I think the regulators are saying, yeah, that's a good idea, but I don't think any of these regulators have ever played one of these games
Hmm.
or even played how the Switch does, because gamers do not care
Right.
about the streaming stuff. Like I
Mm-mm.
I play I play my Xbox games, I play my PlayStation games, my Switch games, all of which have streaming capabilities in some aspect.
Right.
I don't use them because they're not the best.
Right. The only time I will ever use the streaming on Game Pass is if like my daughter wants to play a game that I don't necessarily want downloaded on my hard drive or in my history. I'll give an example here. They have a Peppa Pig game on
Yeah,
Game Pass, and that'll be a game that I stream for my daughter because the time that it takes to download that and to update it, and it's a process, and she just wants to get in and jump and play the game. So in that aspect, I may use the streaming because she doesn't know any better. But my son will use remote play from the PS5 to the PS4 in the bedroom, and he notices right away. He's just like, "Oh,
yeah,
I can't play this, Dad. This is too glitchy." So like,
yeah.
he instantly knows that streaming is not the business, and that's a 5-year old. So people who are professional gamers or game as a pastime hobby are definitely going to notice the streaming is not where it's at. And like you said, if Nintendo is not coming out with the Switch Pro, then having the streaming perks don't really mean anything because your
Yeah.
system is not capable enough to even stream properly.
It was funny because I remember when Nintendo was like, "We got Kingdom Hearts coming, we got Kingdom Hearts coming," and everyone
Hmm.
was all excited. And I was watching the forums, and they're like, "It's going to be releasing on this year," and everyone's all excited. Yeah, I get to play Kingdom Hearts. It's going to be great.
Hmm.
And then they're like, "For streaming," and then everyone in this
Yeah.
forum was like, "Okay, well, I'm not playing it
Uh,
now."
well, yeah,
And
it was the same way with Hitman. Hitman on the Switch
yeah,
was the same way too. It was streaming and it played like trash. So.
exactly. And I think a lot of gamers, streaming is not where it needs to be because the
Mhm.
network is not where it needs to be.
Yeah, a lot
And
of people
until
in
we
rural
get,
areas definitely don't have high speed
yeah,
connection. They're still dealing with dial up and basic modem connections. They're not on the
and
DSL, the T1, you know.
exactly. It's a silly concession, and I think the EU people that are passing this they clearly don't know that this is not a thing that gamers care about or want.
Hmm.
So it's not going to mean a thing.
It's not going to be a thing. Let's move on to the next topic real quick. This is going to be a double whammy. This is one's involving Resident Evil 4. And those who watch the show later at 5 and beyond, today Capcom is having a special presentation of all the games that are slated to come out later this year, Resident Evil 4 being one of them. There's a big whoopsie and then some potential positive news after that. So the Resident Evil 4 Collector's Edition was a very sought after commodity with fans of the series. GameStop offered day one pre-orders for this collector's edition that came with the figure as shown on screen. It comes with a poster, a box, some art book, a steel book case, and the game itself. But GameStop has recently announced and contacted all of their in-store reservations to let them know that they have been canceled. They will not be fulfilling any of the in-store pre-orders for the collector's edition of Resident Evil 4, I'm sorry, which is extremely disappointing, especially with a chain like GameStop, who, prides themselves in offering retail copies of their games at an easy convenience. This definitely causes an inconvenience to the gamers.
Yeah.
Also, which a tidbit that was announced today was that the potentially to be announced during the press conference or the special presentation for Capcom today is that they're going to announce that they're shadow dropping a Resident Evil 4 PS5 demo of sorts. This ad appeared on screen that you see now, had appeared for various um, online browsing networks, and basically Capcom let the cat out of the bag a little early that a demo will be shadow dropping as early as today. Taylor, what are your thoughts on both the shadow dropping of the demo and GameStop fumbling the ball?
So it's not so much just GameStop funneling the balls. From what I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing, is that so you go to buy the collector's edition. The collector's edition was solely through GameStop. It looks like
Mm-hmm.
GameStop seemed to have this like the only ability to order this thing.
Correct.
It was set for $249. It looked fantastic. It had a massive amount of DLC, and then cats out of the bag. In-store pre-orders aren't going to be allowed. Not allowed. Going to be
Fulfilled.
honored.
Right.
And then they even had people that were getting online orders. If you ordered at a certain point, those orders
Mm-hmm.
were getting canceled too. So it wasn't
Right.
it just, to me, it screams that Capcom clearly didn't prepare enough for the amount of orders
Mm-hmm.
and just said, okay, I know that you sold 300,000. We'll give you 50,000. Cancel the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what ended up happening. Maybe just a series of miscommunications or whatever
Right.
it is, but it just looks very poorly. And people will look at GameStop as the person to blame here when it's the supplier.
So you think that GameStop just pulled the plug it as a whole, as opposed to just taking partial shipment or whatever Capcom had available for them?
I think Capcom said, go ahead, open up the pre-orders, and maybe they had a miscommunication on how many pre-orders were supposed to happen.
Right.
GameStop had open pre-orders, and Capcom
or underestimated the demand, probably.
Yeah, exactly. And then after the fact, Capcom was like, oh no, we only have this many. Sorry, we're not going to make more. And just kind of like, and that always goes with the issue. Like it happened with the issue last time I was on when I was talking about Metroid Prime Remastered, was that Nintendo opened the floodgates, and then more pre-orders for the physical edition went out than they actually had stock for.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ordered from GameStop, I think even currently, if you order from GameStop, you're not going to get it till like middle of April.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality is that these companies, they're making these store chains look bad by whatever they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
it could just be an after effect of the shipping issues that we had from the pandemic. It could be production issues, or it could just be the fact that there was just miscommunication. Maybe GameStop thought they said 100,000 when they only meant 1,000 or something, you know, something insane. But it could be something as silly as that. But the sole reality is that once again, GameStop is getting bad press because of fiasco like this, and they've had nothing but bad press for the last 5 years.
Yeah, they can't catch a break. It looks like the industry itself is definitely moving away towards the physical media, and that will really hurt GameStop in the long term. It might not even be a thing next generation. It's just, digital. We're at a spot now where people like me, old timers, I guess, love the physical copies, but these newer kids, these younger kids really don't care for having, what they consider junk on their shelf,
well, these young kids don't understand what happens when a network goes down and they can't play their game.
Not yet, but they will when their PS4 is shut down and they can't access all their games. It looks like that. Yeah. It definitely looks, it's a bad look. And hopefully, from what I've been told, GameStop will be offering steelbook cases for the standard edition for people who did have it pre-ordered. So they'll be receiving an excess of steelbooks just so they can somewhat make it right. And they won't be obviously charging the full $250. They'll just be charging the standard retail.
Right. There's charges standard retail, and then they said anything that's left over from the pre-order amount will be folded into a game of their choosing, kind of a thing. Like even like, okay, now you have like $200 in store credit. Go ahead, just grab whatever you want.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right.
Which is, I don't know. It's still bad PR.
It's bad PR. It's not a good look for GameStop. I hope that this doesn't happen again with a marquee title like Resident Evil. This is a big whoops, and it seriously leaves a black eye in the image of GameStop. Let's move on. Go ahead.
And what it's going to do is that the people who did get the collector's edition are going to realize now they're sitting on gold. They'll probably just buy a standard edition, and then you'll see these things pop up at the end of the next week on eBay for like $1,500.
Yeah, 400, 500, and then every day it'll just increase because people will realize how scarce it is, and
Mhm.
definitely.
They've turned a collector's edition to a unicorn.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to the next topic. This is one of our main topics of the day. Sony says Microsoft could sabotage Call of Duty on PlayStation with late game or post launch bugs. Um, rep for Sony says even if such degradations could be swiftly detected, any remedy would likely be too late, and by which time the gaming community will have lost confidence in PlayStation. So Sony's basically accusing Microsoft of watering down or not fulfilling the testing, the Q&A for potential Activision titles that land on PlayStation after this acquisition, should it proceed and be confirmed.
Yeah,
Which is a valid argument to a valid concern, I believe.
it very much is, and I think the reason why it's very much is because it actually is something that can be really happening. I mean, if a development team is owned by company A and they're told, okay, you have to fix the patch for company B, and company B is your lead competitor, you're not going to be like, oh golly, I'm going to do it right away.
Mhm.
You're gonna be like, we'll get to it when we get to it. There's
Right.
an internal bias that will exist, and I think they're really talking about the fact that if Microsoft owns this company, what motivation will Microsoft have to fixing any issues that are on their competitors' devices?
Mhm.
It is a real thing, and they're like, oh no, they wouldn't do that. But we know internally that these companies have been playing dirty politics for years, and this is
Mhm.
one of those things that you definitely do.
Right.
Like when you have a multi-platform AAA game that pops up, one console always tends to get the favoritism in the day one patches.
Mhm.
It's always been a real thing. And most of the time, the day one patch goes to whoever has the day one exclusive content.
Mhm.
Like, it's kind of insane that people don't think this is actually a thing, but it's always been a thing
It's
because
always been a thing.
developers know what console that they work the best on. And
Mhm.
most of the time, if you spend 99% of your time building a game for platform A, that means platform B is going to have the port.
Mhm.
And the ports don't get the day one patches because their
Right.
infrastructure is already for platform A.
Right. And we saw this a lot in the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 generation. Excuse
Yes,
me.
we did. A lot.
Games were developed on one platform and ported to another. A lot of those games during that generation were programmed and developed with Xbox 360 in mind because it was the easier software or hardware to develop for. And then later they ported it to the 7 core PS3. A lot of
Yep.
people know that those ports had a lot of problems. They were very imperfect in many instances where you would have the 1080p version on Xbox 360, you would get a 720p version on PS3 with maybe some frame issues, aliasing going on, just minor imperfections that add up to an imperfect experience and would overall Sony feels give them a bad name, like they're
Exactly.
incapable of producing Call of Duty at its full capability, while Xbox has all the day one updates, has exclusive DLCs that come first to Xbox, and that's enough. That would be enough to pull the average Saturday Sunday gamer uh, from PlayStation to Xbox if all their friends are playing Call of Duty on the system that supports it the best.
Yeah.
I would also think it would behoove Microsoft not to partake in those practices, only because I would think as a whole it could backfire on them. Um, a lot of gamers nowadays who are paying attention to this type of stuff are kind of hip and smart to what's going on, at least the hardcore ones, people like who watch this show, let's say, and will know that Microsoft is pulling off these dirty tactics to lessen the competitor's version and make their iteration the strongest, the go-to version. Plays best on Xbox, type marketing, and I think it would, again, it would really backfire on Activision and Xbox as a whole if they released a subpar version of the same game on PlayStation. Um, I think those tactics nowadays would be seen through. And it wouldn't necessarily just be smite or a smudge on PlayStation's reputation, but a large poop stain on Activision and Xbox for those type of tactics. Yeah, I think that it would behoove Microsoft to offer the best possible version they can on PlayStation hardware. And I don't think that's a worry that Sony should have. Let's move on to the last topic. This last topic is going to be about dual delays. So the last topic, we're going to start with Starfield. So Starfield will now be launching on September 6, 2016, Bethesda has announced. The company has released a new teaser for its upcoming sci-fi RPG in which it revealed its release date for Xbox Series X and S. In the video, game developer Todd Howard promised a unique experience, announced a Starfield Direct for June 11th, which the studio will present a deep dive into the title. Initially announced in 2018, Starfield was due to launch on November 11, 2022, Bethesda said at E3 2021. In last May, Bethesda then announced that it pushed back to the first half of 2023, though it looks like it's finally settled to the second part. Xbox had this huge gaming showcase last year that said all these titles were coming out in 2022, and one of the few big marquee titles of that showcase that they spent the most time on was Starfield, and they promised that this game was going to come out by the end of 2022 with that November 11th release date. So now we're just about midway through 2023, or 1/4 through 2023.
Yeah.
And it looks like the first quarter. And it looks like this game is yet again being delayed for polishing, Q&A concerns, and just to overall offer a better experience. This is one of those games that Microsoft made Xbox exclusive once they bought out Bethesda. And again, that's another concern of Sony's, is that some of these properties that were in development for multi-platform will become single platform. What do you think about the Starfield delay, Taylor?
I mean, what not to think about it? It's insane. I mean, this game, to me, it's had a worse development than what we had with Halo Infinite. In Halo Infinite, I feel like there was a lot of gamers who basically just said, "I'm done." The moment that the dev team was like, "We're not doing local co-op," everyone was like, "Then what the hell's the point?"
Right.
And
the foundation of Halo is to have couch co-op.
Yeah, it is. And even my son, we sat down and played all of them, couch co-op, the whole franchise. And then, like, when he found out that one, he hasn't even touched it since they made that announcement. He's like, I'll beat it eventually. I'm just annoyed. And he hasn't touched it in over a year, which is really a shame. And I think with Starfield was one of those games that I think when they announced that this game was going to be no longer perspective for multiple platforms, a lot of fans were kind of like, "Ugh, that sucks," because this was a big game, and everyone kind of knew that Microsoft had commissioned it, and they were still fingers crossed hoping that it would end up on multi-platform. But once everyone knew it was 100% going only to them, we kind of just waited and hoped for the best. And here we are again, getting another delay into Q3.
Right.
And it sucks because this game was promised a while ago. And I don't know. I mean, Bethesda is a fantastic studio that makes some fantastic games. But I'll always say that Bethesda doesn't always have the best graphical system. Like the Fallout games are fun, but if you ever hear anyone say, "Oh, Fallout looks so gorgeous," that's never a sentence, because Fallout looks just like it plays. Its engine looks like it's just a polished version of the PS3 engine with the Xbox 360 engine. It doesn't play the best, and they're glitchy, and that's what it is. Elder Scrolls series the same way. Those games are fantastic, and I think the modding community has made them better than what they actually are out of the gate. And the only game that I think in recent years that was pretty fantastic right off the bat was the one they made for Sony. Was that Bethesda? I don't even know.
Yeah, that was Deathloop.
There you go. Yeah, Deathloop. Deathloop.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, we don't have a lot, and we don't have a lot of
Yeah.
confidence in this. And the fact that they keep delaying this game again and again and again
Mm-hmm.
kind of reminds me of like a No Man's Sky scenario where like the game's
Yeah.
going to come out, and when it finally comes out, people
And
are going
it's
to be like,
lackluster.
"Wow, we waited for this long.
Yeah.
What happened?"
I completely agree. You know, that was a great comparison right there with the No Man's Sky. It just feels like it's just taking forever. And that's my biggest concern, is that once this game finally does drop, you know, the marketing makes it seem like you could do all this and do so much and go and do these crazy things. But once the game comes out, you know, it lacks. And
Mm,
that's the biggest concern of mine, is that when it finally drops, all this time spent and it's not going to deliver on the promises and hopes that they, you know, first led gamers to believe that it was gonna, you know, entail.
yeah,
Um, we
it's.
have. Go ahead.
I mean,
No, go
it's
ahead.
insane. It's insane because they said we want to make Starfield a better game, and when you
Hmm.
have such a like a last minute push that like adds another 6 months to the clock, what game in your recent memory has had something that has succeeded like that, like
Hmm.
out the gate? I mean, the only game that I can really think of that had that kind of a big old delay recently was like Final Fantasy VII Remake had a big last minute delay, and I think they
Yeah,
even
that
had
game
it
took
for
like 5+ years to make.
yeah. And then they put out like a pretty hefty day one patch, and then after that they didn't need any more patches. Like it was
Hmm.
fine.
Yeah.
But to me, Bethesda, I don't know. I don't know, man. It doesn't it doesn't make me feel confident that so if this is what's happening with Microsoft's last acquisition,
Hmm.
what's going to happen with
With
Call of Duty
Activision.
or Activision or any of those games where like you have these big games and then like they just get strung along for years.
And that's my concern too, is that ever since Microsoft, Xbox acquired these studios who would regularly put out content, we don't see a whole lot of content, you know. With Bethesda, they have Doom, they have, you know, Deathloop they put out not too long ago, but you know, Elder Scrolls, um, they have so many games that they could be putting out, and you know, I'm not seeing a lot of output from them recently. A lot of these Microsoft studios that they purchased, or these third-party studios they purchased for Microsoft Game Studios, you're not seeing a lot of output from.
Yeah. And
Bethesda had
I pulled
Bethesda.
up a timeline and this is kind of insane.
Okay.
So on Microsoft Windows and Xbox, Morrowind came out in 2002, back when I was
Okay.
in high school.
Hmm.
Then in PlayStation 2 and Xbox, they had a drag racing game come out in 2004.
Hmm.
Another drag racing game in 2006. So 3 games in the 2002, 4, and 6. And then 2006, they got Elder Scrolls Oblivion.
Hmm.
2 years later, you got Fallout 3.
Okay.
3 years later, you got the next Skyrim. 4 years later, you got Fallout 4. 1 year later, you get an update of Skyrim.
Hmm.
Next year, you get another update of Skyrim.
Hmm.
And then 2 years later, you get Fallout 76. They haven't had this fantastic timeline of being on time. And
Hmm.
it started off as being 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, then went to 2 years, 2 years,
Three,
3 years,
three,
4 years,
4
5 years,
years.
and
Yeah.
it keeps jumping because the last game they came out with after Fallout 76 and 18 was an Android game called Elder Scrolls Blade. And,
I remember
and
that. Yeah.
Fallout 76 was 5 years ago. They've had five
Yeah.
years to make Starfield, and we still don't even have a date for Elder Scrolls 6 or Fallout 5. Those are still to be announced. They'll happen when
Hmm.
they happen, kind of a thing, which is, ooh, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think Xbox needs to bulk up that pipeline rather quickly. You know, it was great to get a hi-fi rush, and you know, that was a great surprise. And you know, Bethesda put that out and to critical acclaim. Everyone loved it, but we need more of those. Like
Yeah,
we need more. And that they had that showcase for Bethesda, and they had a lot. They have like about 4 or 5 games in the pipeline, but those games look like they're still a ways out. And with Starfield being delayed again, honestly, I don't have any faith that that game is going to come out this year at all. Like,
I wouldn't be surprised if in like July, August they say the game's not where it should be. Let's move it to January, and
mhm.
then and then the gaming community as a whole will just throw their hands in the air.
Yeah,
But I
we won't
think
care about it until it comes out.
the concern has always been And I think I was reading a lot of people and just the forums and the comment sections, and a lot of people, like, obviously you go to comments to bitch about something, and that's kind of what happens. But I always like to look at the comments just to see what the overall vibe is that people are getting. And I saw this comment that really caught my eye when they said that developers, the average developer, prefers Sony to Xbox right now, solely because Xbox Game Pass is cannibalizing sales, and they will get a basic payout to put their game on day one on Game Pass, while Sony will say, let's have your game be on stores, make your money, make your stuff, and then after 6 months we'll put it then on PlayStation Plus.
Right.
Like
that
the
is
day
that,
one Game Pass,
yeah.
It's not making developers grow. I mean, if you say Starfield is a day one Game Pass, which I'm pretty sure it was announced that it was going to be, Bethesda making their money back on this game is fantastic. But unless they see a hefty profit, they're not going to be able to employ any more people to make these games bigger, unless Microsoft gives them extra funds. Right now, Bethesda has, what, 400, 450 maybe in that region of developers. That number really hasn't changed. And it's been like 2-3 years. That number is the same.
Yeah.
And while you have other companies like Square Enix or even Bungie or anyone, when they make these big hits, they expand. We add another 50 developers or 60 developers because we can afford it now.
Right.
And then you have Ubisoft, who's having their issues out the gate with everything. I mean, Beyond Good and Evil is in limbo forever. They even said that it's not even an active development. It's just on the back burner still after like a decade. But they've hired more teams to work on more Assassin's Creed games because of the success of the last 3 games. So day one Game Pass is good for consumers that like to play these games, but it's kind of like a death sentence to smaller development teams who rely on profits to grow.
Right.
Because if you don't grow, then you have the same team, and if it took you 10 years to make that first game, probably make you 10 years to make the second game.
Right. It can be a death nail, but it can also be, a lifesaver for companies who also are, getting the pre-order numbers that they're expecting to hit. And then, Microsoft will throw them a lifeline and offer Game Pass day one. And that'll instantly get their eyes, more eyes on their title than ever would. Microsoft has, like you mentioned, a big tendency to throw a lot of their first party and second party games on Game Pass day one, whereas Sony doesn't believe that that's a viable business model. We do see some games that do debut day one on PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium, like Stray, that cat game, or Shadow Warrior 3. Those were day one drops for PlayStation Plus Premium Extra. But those are special cases. This is not like a regular everyday thing where you see day one drops on that.
Right.
on that hardware, because that company knows that business model is not sustainable, like you said. And so Bethesda's got to jump the gun and really drop another Hi-Fi Rush Shadow drop, like another game of that quality, because we got to get people talking about something else and get the attention off of Starfield right now, because delays can be only good up to a point. We don't want the game to come out half-mast, and we want it to be a complete game. It would do more damage if the game was released now and it was incomplete and had a whole slew of issues and bugs.
It'd be another No Man's Sky, where the game will be good a year later.
Right. And then by then, most of the audience has already moved on, There is one more delay we're going to talk about today, and this is a rather big delay. We just talked about this about a show or two ago, when Sony made a big hoopla about the Suicide Squad game. It was the prime feature of their little showcase, state of play, whatever you want to call it. And they spent over 15 minutes talking about this game. Unfortunately, it did not receive the reception from the fan base as they hoped it would. And it seems like we're getting a delay. So news is broke from Bloomberg and Jason Schreier that WB and Rockstar have decided to delay Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League once again from May of this year to later
Rocksteady,
this
not
year.
Rockstar.
Oh,
Yeah.
did I say Rock? What did I say?
You said Rockstar.
Oh,
That's
Rockstar.
another
Rockstar.
example of games getting delayed into oblivion, because I think I may die before we see Grand Theft Auto 6. Like, I'll die of old age.
But Taylor corrected me, Rocksteady's Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was once again delayed from May to an unknown time later this year, according to a person familiar with the situation. A showcase of the game during PlayStation stream last month was poorly received by fans. This delay also moves Suicide Squad out of a crowded release window that currently includes the new Zelda, Diablo, and Final Fantasy games. For what it's worth, delay is likely due to adding additional polish, not the overall core game design that caused the initial backlash. Suicide Squad started off as a games as a service and will remain one short of a complete reboot, which would require a much longer delay. Taylor,
Yes. So,
what do you think about this delay?
I watched the state of play, and I actually, I ironically, contrary to everyone else on the internet, I actually had more interest in the game following the state of play than I did prior to it. Because in my mind, when I was looking at the initial stuff and they're like, oh, it's going to be Suicide Squad game, in my brain, I'm like, how is a Suicide Squad game going to work if it plays like Batman Arkham? And I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was like, this doesn't sound like it's going to be a ton of fun. And it doesn't sound like it's going to work if you have multiplayer, because how is multiplayer going to work in those weird layouts? And in my brain, I'm just like thinking of like Batman walking through Arkham, but instead now you're Harley Quinn and you have like this tight little corner and you're fighting with other people. And I'm like, this doesn't work. It reminded me of like those old over the top multiplayer games. I remember a good example for one. Was it Baldur's Gate? I think maybe it was like one of those games. I was
Punch
thinking
of the
like,
Reckoning was like that too. If you remember,
sure,
Punch of the Reckoning,
yeah. And I was like, I don't think it works. And then when I saw the video, and I'm like, okay, so they're making it kind of like a better version of all of the other Gotham Knights games and all those other games. Like I could see this work. And I actually was like, okay, this is interesting. But then I saw a lot of the complaints where people said, okay, so if you're fighting bosses, you're just shooting purple things. And I'm like, and I looked at the video again. I'm like, it kind of is. Yeah. I mean, you're fighting the bad guys, and the bad guys have these little purple orbs on them, and that's what you're shooting. Or the monsters have these big purple. I'm like, okay, I can see the complaint. You're just shooting purple things. Yeah. I get it. So the complaints are valid. I definitely see it. And games as a service it's a hard dragon to conquer. And if Rocksteady thinks they can conquer it, then I'm going to give them my benefit of the doubt. But no one has really made it work so far. So,
yeah, I have to agree with you. I'm still chomping through Arkham Knights, or Gotham Knights. I'm sorry.
Gotham Knights.
Yeah, Gotham. I want to enjoy it. And the only time I'm finding myself enjoying it is when I have a co-op companion. My friend Josh bought the game day one, and it's the only reason why I bought the game was to play with him. And I just can't feel motivated to play that game unless I'm playing with him. And
which is funny. I actually haven't played it in multiplayer yet. I mean, I haven't done. I bought it and I played it, and I should be near the end of the game, but I haven't powered up any of the co-op stuff yet because I just don't think it. I haven't had anyone who's wanted to do it.
Yeah. So we could probably go online and bang it out, because if you haven't done it and I haven't done it, we could probably just team up and do it together. But
might as well. I mean, I should be near the end of the game. I just like took down one of the bad guys, and I think I have to go do the big ending stuff.
So I'm probably like on night 4 or 5.
Oh, I think I'm on night like 20. So I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm only on like night 4 or 5, but we grinded quite a bit to get there, and to, we do the horde little practice mode, and you can kind of like build up your levels and change your suit and power up, certain gadgets and stuff like that. And it's just, there's an aspect that I just can't put my finger on that's missing from the Arkham games that doesn't encourage me to want to return unless I'm with a team or banging it out with a colleague. Like, it doesn't have a very strong single player aspect. And that's my concern with Suicide Squad, is that it's going to follow in those veins. Given Rocksteady's, stellar history of making games, it's probably going to be the best version of Gotham Knights that could ever exist. But it doesn't leave me with much promise that it's just going to be another iteration of this type of gameplay. And
I mean, pushing a game from a May release date to an unexpected Q4 release date probably means we're going to get this game around Halloween or so, which is very rough.
Halloween, Christmas time, right?
Yeah, like right before the holidays, and I think that's going to be a big thing. And I think, to me, these games as a service, what kind of lost a lot of me in Gotham Knights has always been, I think the story has always been a huge factor for me. And the Gotham Knights story is okay. The intro was really cool. See the downfall of Batman was really cool.
Yeah.
But when I got leaked some of the spoilers for the end before the game came out, I thought the 11th hour stuff is very weak. And if anyone could make a solid game with a solid story, it has to be Rocksteady. I mean, they made they redefined the superhero game genre with Batman and the Arkham game. So
3 times over.
3 times. Every single time they're like, oh, can we top it? We topped it. Can we top it again? Yeah, we did it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that if this game has a story that makes you want to play it in single player mode, 100%. But they will have to have some sort of one up on how Gotham Knights did it, because Gotham Knights, the drop in, drop out multiplayer mode is fantastic. I think that a great idea, and it makes it so that whoever drops in, it doesn't matter where you're at in the story, you get level scaled to that point.
Right. That's its best feature.
Its best feature. And if the person is at a late, like say you and I are playing, and I'd have you drop in at the end of the game, and you see the whole end of the game. When you play the game on yours and you get to that point, it'll tell you, you've seen this already. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah.
Like, that's a fantastic feature. And I think if they do that, beautiful. But the game has to be able to stand on its own in single player and also give you a multiplayer aspect that works.
Yeah.
And if
that's compelling enough to return to every week and do any type of mission side quests, any weekly quests that they'll more than likely have.
Like with the Gotham Knights, the Starro raid, like they have to have a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They have to have a reason why people who beat the game will want to say, okay, I'm going to go play it again. Oh, but I already finished this villain, so why am I just playing? Like, they have to give you something.
Yeah, so there has to be some sort of incentive to want to go back and play it as a different character, or even bang it out again with your friends. You know what I mean?
Like for instance, Destiny, right? Destiny has become a games as a service game. It's really what it is. They have their expansions, which is always fantastic. The foundation of that game has always been, here's the story, get through the story. And now, by the way, now you've got raids, now you've got strikes, now you've got multiplayer. Here's 4 different types of multiplayer. Here's the different place that, like, they give you a reason to come back. And I know most people who play that game play the story in a day and then just come back for like raids and stuff. Right. So if you want a game like this that does that, you have to give people a reason to come back.
Right.
And if that means learning from the failures of the Avengers game, where you can't just throw in a random character and a random side story, if they do something like that, say if you have this game, you beat the main storyline and you defeat Brainiac, now you have post-game Amanda Waller's missions, and your job is now to go catch Bronze Tiger, and once you catch him, he's on your team, kind of thing. If they give you something like that, this game will succeed. But if the game is just take down the Justice League, take down Brainiac, and now multiplayer, you can just do those same missions with your friends, no one's going to care.
It'll get stale quickly.
It will.
Yeah.
And my issue with the Avengers game was that the battle passes were crap. The battle passes did not work because the experience you got from a battle pass required you to grind like 40 hours to get one level.
And that's my concern with Suicide Squad, and that was a concern with Gotham Knights, the constant grinding. They try to pass it off as RPG elements by building up, equipment and whatnot, which, but it's a grind fest at the end of the day. And, those grind fests get stale quickly, like you mentioned.
What it's going to turn into is that you're going to be like me, where you unlock a skin that covers up all your gear, and you just apply the skin, and every time you get a new piece of gear, you just jump to that new piece. There's no loyalty for my armor. It's just I find a new shiny one and I equip it. Like
equip
that's
it. Oh, it's a higher rank. Equip.
boom, equip.
Yeah.
It's like, because if I
Yeah.
have to grind for like some random element to
Mhm.
upgrade this thing, or if I just go to the next boss and get a better piece of gear, I'm not going to grind. I'm just gonna rush
Yeah.
through.
Yeah,
And
maybe like once you beat the solo campaign and gain like an ultimate weapon or something like that,
yeah,
for each character, that would add a little bit of replay. I think enough replayability to, carry the game until the next DLC content. Hopefully, that would be a substantial
yeah,
amount of content that they would add for whatever said mission is they're going to include in that, and characters as well.
yeah,
Um, those characters will get played out really quick, and they'll have to introduce new members of the squad to keep the game fresh and to change gameplay mechanics with those newly added characters as well.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm not surprised with this delay, Taylor. The clapback was pretty loud.
It was, and I think it's just because a lot of people are in the same boat where they're like, "Who is this game for?"
Mm-hmm.
Because the Arkham franchise, the replayability of the Arkham franchise was how good the story was, how good
Right.
the gameplay was. And games as a service, their replayability is availability of content.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to make an Arkham game and games as a service, how does that work?
Right. How do
And
you
I think
monetize?
that's
How do you monetize that? You know what I
yeah, and I
mean?
think that's why people were upset because they're like, you're not giving us a roadmap with this. You're not
Mhm.
saying here's the game. Once you beat the story, here's the next 5 characters you're going to go against. Like
Right.
they're not giving you that roadmap. If there's a roadmap, if they put out a roadmap and said this is the plan for the next couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
people would probably be a little bit more excited.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
But we'll see.
Yeah. So yeah, very worried about the Suicide Squad game. I hope it comes out a stellar experience. Um, but yeah, I don't like I said in the last show we talked about this. I'm a little in the middle. I like the idea of playing as the squad and having the multiplayer, but Gotham Knights hasn't really given me a much hope that WB has learned from their mistakes. I'm hoping Rocksteady does.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously these games were in development for a long time when games of a service was really popping, but now you kind of see the trend of those games kind of dying off a little bit. People are starting to see those services for what they are, just money cash cows, cash grabs, and it's turning a lot of people off. So I think it's like they said in the article, it's too late now to make any fundamental core game changes, but making the game the tightest experience possible, adding a slew of content that will keep players engaged, I think is the best way to go for this game, and is the only saving grace this game is going to have.
It's going to be very interesting to see because I know the big complaint that a lot of comic readers had with Gotham Knights was the way that the game mechanics made each character unique didn't fit comic book lore.
Right.
Like, okay, so that's cool that Tim Drake can use the Watchtower to teleport. I guess I'll believe that. But the only 2 characters in that game that actually felt like the characters from the comics were Nightwing and Batgirl. Red Hood, he was now punching people with his pistols. He was shooting rubber bullets or something. And and by the way, he's got some like supernatural power where he can jump on air.
He could skip on air.
Yeah, and I was playing it. I'm like, okay, he is a fun character to play as. But everything about his mechanics frustrate me from a comic books fan standpoint.
Right, because they're not accurate.
And then you have the same thing literally happening with the
Suicide
Kill
Squad.
the Justice League. I mean, King Shark is King Shark. Harley Quinn has a grappling hook now. She's apparently Batgirl with a hammer. Deadshot has a jetpack. Okay. But Captain Boomerang is now the main character of Final Fantasy 15, where he throws his boomerang and teleports to it.
Yeah.
Like, what?
What is that? Like,
yeah, so
he could never do that.
Yeah, like, so I had concerns from just the deviations, but at the same time, like I always said, I do trust Rocksteady.
And like that's the only reason why I'm even willing to give this game a chance. Otherwise I would just stick with my Gotham Knights. But it's Rocksteady, so you almost have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to create something great.
You really do, because they
Because
haven't failed yet.
Yeah, they haven't failed yet. Exactly.
And
They
I'm
haven't
hoping that
steered
this
us
isn't the
wrong.
one that they fail on.
Well, I'm hoping Warner Brothers didn't steer them in the wrong direction and make them create a game that they didn't want, and now this is the outcome. Like,
Well, we all know
yeah.
that the last management of Warner Brothers really just shot everyone in the foot. And that
Yeah,
was just their thing.
but are the sins of the past going to haunt the future, though? That's my concern, is that if this game tanks, does Rocksteady tank? Do they shut down after that? Do they spend so much of their resources that all their chips are in this one games of a service title? And if it fails, what happens to the studio out of that? Are they okay?
Yeah.
Have they built enough rapport with the industry that they can survive a failure?
What they have to do is they have to very quickly remaster Arkham Asylum and Arkham City really fast on the Arkham Knight engine. They have to give us like a straight 1-1 Last of Us Part 1 remake, and that's how they pull it off.
It's like a total face remake, but still the same thing. Yeah.
It's like here's the battle. Here's the game engine from Arkham Knight, and the graphical engine from Arkham Knight. But here's Arkham Asylum redone in that engine. Like, that would be the only way they could really recover from a mass failure like this, would be to give fans what they actually want. But even then, the whole remake facelift is kind of wearing thin on people.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Well, I think that's going to do it for us today, Taylor. Do you have anything else you want to share today?
I don't. The internet is full of fun stuff, but we will see what happens. I'm legitimately concerned about Starfield being something that
Oh yeah, they're spending way so much money on that game that it has to be amazing. Otherwise, anything short is a failure.
I think that, like, at this point, to me, it's like Duke Nukem Forever, where people were expecting it to be like this amazing
the
thing,
next
and then
coming.
When it came out, you're like,
it was
like,
sludge.
It's going to be the best. It's going to be the best. It's going to be
playable
the best.
sludge.
And when it came out, you're like, this was the game that should have came out 15 years ago, because it feels like a game that was made 15
years ago, because it was a game that was made 15 years ago. They just put a fresh coat of paint on top of it.
Yeah, so I'm just worried that Starfield's going to miss the mark, and they built up all this hype and expectation for a game that you can polish. What's the term? You can polish a turd all you want, but it's still a turd.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. Taylor, where can people follow you at?
Well, you can follow me personally on The Cultured Nerd on Twitter and Instagram. That's my realm. So
you can also follow the. You can also follow. Wait, this way.
Yep.
Wait. Okay. Anyways, you can follow The Cultured Nerd, or you can also follow me down here at Moses IVVIOC on Twitter and Instagram. That's going to be our show for today. We want to let you know that you could follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/The Cultured Nerd. Each show has their own individual tiers, so if you want to support your favorite show, please do. We highly appreciate that. And today I am the host of this show, The Cultured Gamer, along with Taylor as our special guest co-host. We want to thank our Patreon supporters, Wesley, Ashla Beck, Connor, Ann, Salib, Oscar, Craig, Mitch, and Stephen. Stephen, thank you. Logo was done by Jose Navarro at Navarro and Joseph M. And the intro music wasn't done by Malillo, but the video was. So yes. Thank you for that, Malillo. We deeply appreciate your hard work in relates to that. And thank you for joining us today. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Go ahead and click subscribe to follow the channel, and scan that QR code for some cool cultured nerd stuff. Thank you for watching.
All the shows are on there.
Yes, they are. Thank you, Taylor. And thank you. That's going to be it for us today. Tune in next week. Bye-bye.